for the new Canton Lutheran Church was laid. The lumber for the new church came from the old, and the granite was obtained from the Del Rapids quarry. Timbers to support the ceiling and roof came from Newton Hill. It was dedicated in 1910. In 1884, this large two-story brick school was built on what is now Jack Fox Park, just north of the courthouse square. It was originally designed to hold elementary classes on the first floor and high school classes on the second. It soon became overcrowded and only high school classes were held in the old central school. After the structure began to sink into an old creek bed which had once crossed the property, the Board of Education began to look for a location suitable for a larger new school. You may note the old standpipe in the background. And the courthouse off to the right. The location chosen for the present high school was on the north edge of Canton on Elder Street between Main and Lincoln. The land was formerly occupied by the old fairgrounds. In 1922, this building was ready for classes. In 1875, a group of scheming businessmen made an offer to finance and build a courthouse in Canton rather than in Lower Canton, west of the Beloit Bridge, as John M. Carpenter had dreamed. Built of brick on the site of the present courthouse, the building measured 32 by 40 feet and contained 4 offices on the first floor and a courtroom and jury room on the second. Inadequate in size almost from the beginning, a measure was approved in 1889 to raise taxes and erect a 3.5-story addition on the east side of the old courthouse. This addition was ready for use in 1890. In 1899, the old part was torn down and a new structure designed to blend with the new portion was erected. The clock tower, operated by large weights that descended from the tower through the lower floors, was also added. Designed by renowned Sioux Falls architect Wallace Dow, it has been called the jewel of the many buildings he erected throughout South Dakota. In 1880, the Lincoln County Bank was established. This building, erected in 1896, was home to the bank until it closed in the mid-20s. Farmers State Bank, established in 1901, bought this building in 1928. In 1933, President Roosevelt closed all the banks in the United States. Farmers State Bank was allowed to reopen and occupy this building until August of 1976, and celebrated its 75th year by moving into its new building. In 1888, a great fire destroyed this entire block, including the Merchants Hotel at the far right, where the Sheriff's Office now stands. Moved here in 1879 from the corner of 9th and Main, the Merchants Hotel enjoyed a thriving business up until the big blaze. The Syndicate building at the far south end of this block and 9 other businesses were also totally destroyed in this fire that raged for over 3 hours. This disaster prompted the city of Canton to provide adequate fire protection, and in 1891 the city water system was installed, complete with fire hydrants and a standpipe. Here we see the original home of Farmers State Bank on the corner of 5th and Main. Built in 1891, 3 years after the Great Fire, and known as the Knowlton Building, it was demolished in 1977 to make room for the new First Federal Savings and Loan. Here's another view of the Knowlton Building. Note the street light hanging above the intersection of 5th and Main. James Wall built a 2-story frame hotel on the northwest corner of 6th and Cedar in 1880. A year later, he added a 3-story brick addition with 18 more sleeping rooms. Its red and white brick, bay windows, and porches made it one of the most beautiful buildings in Canton. Named after its proprietor, G.W. Harlan, the Harlan House closed in 1906 after a fire badly damaged its interior. It was later torn down and became the location of the old Catholic Church. The Rudolph Hotel, which once stood at the northwest corner of 5th and Lincoln, was by far Canton's largest and grandest hotel. Built in 1902 by a stock company headed by Canton businessman O.A. Rudolph, the brick structure featured 44 sleeping rooms, each with its own room service telephone. Marble tiles decorated the front office, and a large staircase led to a parlor on the second floor. A large dining banquet room was in constant use for local parties and conventions. The Rudolph also was the headquarters for the ski jumping tournaments held at the Canton Ski Hill in the 20s and 30s. After struggling in the Depression years, it was closed in 1937. It later became home to the South Dakota Pheasant Company and was torn down in 1974 to make room for the new Farmer State Bank. Here we see four rather well-dressed gentlemen standing on the east side of the Rudolph. Little did they know that someday they would become part of this video history of Canton. In 1892, the Canton Fire Department was organized with two volunteer companies, the Lightning Hose Company and the Phoenix Hose Company. In 1916, the city purchased its first fire truck, and it was housed in the former Linderman Saloon building on the southwest corner of 4th and Broadway. The fire bell, which stood outside that building, is now in the tower of the old fire hall, built in 1904. Here we see the west side of Main Street between 4th and 5th. In about 1900. At the far right is the First National Bank, which was established in 1879. It was operated until 1933, when it was closed and liquidated. A 1917 fire destroyed some of the buildings in the middle of the block. In 1888, Doc Noyd relocated his drugstore here at 109 South Main and remained the home of Noyd Drug for the next 84 years. Doc sold everything from ice cream to dandruff cures, and even Edison phonographs and records when they came out. For many years, he managed the Bedford Hall, just south of the drugstore, until a fire destroyed them both in 1970. Noyd quickly rebuilt, and his children later became involved in its operation. When Doc's son Gus died in 1967, Dick Case bought the business and operated it here until 1972. Here's a view looking southeast from the corner of 6th and Cedar, where the Canton Fire Department and Police Station now stand. The buildings on the far left is where City Hall is presently located, and the open area to the south is where Midwest Fur now stands.